All right, so our next presenter is Sean Prager, and Sean is an entomologist and assistant professor at the University of Saskatchewan. Sean has extensive experience in insect ecology and agricultural entomology, working on a variety of insect and crop systems. And he's the director of a new, soon-to-be-opened lab called the University of Saskatchewan Insect Research Facility. Here's Sean.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so this is a little bit something different, but I'm just going to talk to you a bit about our new facility, our new toy. And in particular, I want to talk about it because sort of a good portion of the funding, about a third roughly of the industry funding for this facility is coming from canola funds. So we do call it the University of Saskatchewan Insect Research Facility, or USURF for short. Partly it's just so we can show cute cartoons of surfing insects. But what is, and why do we have this? So first, I just want to give a basic idea of why we need such a facility. And that is that at the University of Saskatchewan, and really in many places in the prairies, but really at the U of S in particular, we don't have a lot of infrastructure for insect research. And that's a historical thing, largely because we didn't have a lot of entomology research done at the university. It was mostly done by Ag Canada. But the result is that we are very limited in both who we can train and how we can train in the kind of work we do. And when we do need to do certain kinds of work, we can only do it by collaborations with Agriculture Canada, and that's often difficult because of the restrictions on who can access their facilities, and this is even with outside COVID, and also just general capacity. So to solve that, we have built our own facility, or we're building our facility, and there's a special feature of this facility, which is that it's one of, if not the only facility in a university, certainly in the prairies, that is PPC2. So PPC2 basically means that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has assigned various different levels of concern to different kinds of insects. I'll show you a little chart about this in a sec. And basically what it amounts to are things that they consider to be particularly important as having the potential to damage crops in a particular location. And so because of that, what they do is they require you to have certain kinds of quarantines or permits to bring those insects or pathogens into your location. And in order to do that, you need these special facilities. And so these facilities are really based around this idea that you want to balance the likelihood that the particular thing you're going to work with will establish and the consequence of doing so. So what they're really saying is, and you can see in this chart, PPC2 are these yellow boxes. I sort of highlighted them in black. What they're really saying is, we don't want to bring in things that would be really problematic for agriculture. So a pest that doesn't yet exist, or beneficial that we don't know whether or not it would have effects on things that we don't want to change, and that it's likely to be able to survive in a particular environment. So with that, a good idea of thinking about why having such a facility here is this. Paul has talked a lot about the benefits on a landscape scale of having beneficial insects and how having the right balances can help you, and why you want spiders and beetles and all sorts of things. And Hector has sort of given you a little bit of an idea of how their interactions is. But this facility allows us to dig into the biology of these organisms, and not just the organisms we already have here, but the organisms we don't have here, the ones that aren't yet in Saskatchewan or in Alberta, or that we really want to look at for one reason or another, but we can't let out into the environment. And this can mean all kinds of things. It could be genetics or phylogeography. So we can ask questions about where do insects come from and how do they migrate and how do they damage plants. And we can do this all in a very controlled way. It also allows us to train students, because to do this work otherwise would either not be possible or require us to send them over to Ag Canada if they would be allowed to. So let me just explain what this facility is. So what is USURF? Well, the short answer, it's a really fancy room. A little bit longer answer, it's a space equipped with many controlled growth chambers that has been designed to meet a set of very particular standards that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency has set forth. And these cover everything from how you can operate in the facility to the kinds of tables you can use and the flooring and the lighting and the HVAC systems. It's all designed to make sure nothing that you bring in there will escape, so that you can work on things that would otherwise be problematic. So let me just give you a quick idea of what it looks like. So for those of you familiar with the University of Saskatchewan campus, this is the agriculture building. So the red arrow points to where it is on campus. This is the big ag building. It's the big shiny glass building. And it has 6 floors, and our facility will be located on the 6th floor. So these red boxes indicate sort of the broader confines of my research labs and what will really be the USERF facility. But the heart of the USERF facility will be this area here. So it's this part that's highlighted really sort of in this red, red larger rectangle. And it's the part that's really in this red square here. So what we're going to do is position within our existing lab space this special rearing area. And this is sort of a diagram of what it is. And really what this amounts to is a couple of walk-in chambers. And these are special chambers that allow us to control temperature and humidity and all of the conditions that you might want for growing plants or maintaining insects. And this is what they would look like inside. So you can see they're very, very large rooms. They have shelves, they have special doors. We can build flight cages for pollinators. We can bring in different kinds of insects and different plants. We can change almost any condition in it. So we can look at all sorts of interactions and relationships between plants and insects and pathogens. It also has 5 reach-in chambers. So this is where we keep our insects. So this allows us to keep different kinds of insects around all the time. So we can work on them all the time. We don't need to work them on the field, and we don't need to recollect them. So that gives us a lot of flexibility. It has special facilities for disposing of these things, because again, we do not want them to get into the environment. And this allows us to dispose of both insects and also pathogens. So something like clubroot, if we wanted to work on it without putting risk to growers in the area or something like that. As a work area, of course, because you need to be able to do some work. And what's nice about this also is that it is then attached to our wet entomology lab. So our facilities to do sort of more traditional entomology, and then our extraction lab, and then next to that, our molecular lab. So we can rear these insects, we can do experiments on them, we can look at the genetics of them, we can do chemical ecology, all sorts of work can be done. And it's basically done like this. Within the quarantine, we keep the insects in these chambers and we do the experiments that require them to be alive where we don't want them to get out. We can do this in part because we have a large phytotron in the basement of our building. So we have lots of growth facilities for plants. And then we can bring these plants into these walk-in chambers, so what's represented over here, and do the different kind of work. And then in different ways, once the insects are no longer a threat to us because they're dead or frozen or something like that, we can bring them back out into these molecular labs, and we can do molecular biology, all kinds of things like that. So what this allows us to do then is get to some questions that are of actual economic benefits. And really what it comes down to is that almost 40% of all crops grown in the world are lost to pests. And that results in 77% of all agricultural pesticide use, or that is, I should say, all pesticide use on plants is used in agriculture. Sorry, I'm going a little fast here. What does this mean? Well, what it really means is this allows us to get at some of the mechanisms of things to try to understand how can we optimize some of what we do. And in canola, it really looks like this. So this is just to get at why this is an important facility. These are the major canola or sort of rapeseed pests in the world. And what you can see is there's about 7 that we recognize in Canada, 10 in Australia, 10 in China, and about 17 in Europe. Now, what some of you may realize is that some of the pests that we have in Canada have actually come from other places, Europe, China, and Australia. And because we know some of these come, a lot of what we want to do is try to sort of preemptively study how these pests would work in our environment, or do we have natural enemies that might be able to attack them already, or do we need to make new thresholds? And all of that requires us to keep these insects, which obviously we don't want to do in a way where they might get out into the world and attack our existing plants. And our new facility is basically designed to let us do that. So it lets us take things like these rape stem weevils, bring them back to Saskatoon and work on them with our varieties of canola and things like that, so we can kind of get out ahead of it. And so bring it back, what can we do? Well, we can do all kinds of things. And mostly we can do them on those insects, those species that we would not otherwise be able to work with because we would be threatening in the environment if we let them out. And most importantly, it lets us do it with students involved, which is very difficult in any other way. So we can train students. It also just adds our capacity. So we can train more students, and we can train them at the highest levels of entomological research and chemical ecology and genetics and all sorts of things like that. And this will just produce more knowledgeable people to help growers in addition to the actual knowledge we're going to produce. So I don't know if that was my 6 minutes or not. It probably took a little longer, but hopefully that gives an idea of what this new facility is and why we're going to be able to use it, and why it's really an amazing thing that we're going to have, and why we're so grateful to have gotten the funding to build it from Canola, and also from some of the other groups that are going to. So this is also going to be funded by Western Grains Research Foundation and Sask Pulse and Canadian Food, or rather the Canadian Foundation for Innovation. So lots of groups put into this, and I think it's going to be just a really beneficial thing for many, many reasons.
Right on. Thanks, Sean.